Okay, ready for the next part. The roly-poly bird to the rescue. Muggle-Wump and his family longed to escape from the cage in Mr. Twit's garden and go back to the African jungle where they came from. They hated Mr. and Mrs. Twit for making their lives so miserable. They also did not like what they were doing to the birds every Tuesday night. "Fly away, birds," they shouted, jumping about in the cage and waving their arms. "Don't sit on the big dead tree. It's just been smeared all over with sticky glue. Go and sit somewhere else." But these were English birds, and they didn't understand the African language that the monkeys spoke. So they took no notice and went on using the big dead tree and getting caught for Mrs. Twit's bird pie. Then one day, a truly magnificent bird flew down out of the sky and landed on the monkey's cage. "Good heavens!" cried all the monkeys together. "It's the roly-poly bird. What on earth are you doing over here in England, roly-poly bird?" Like the monkeys, the roly-poly bird came from Africa, and he spoke the same language as they did. "I've come for a holiday," said the roly-poly bird. "I like to travel." He fluffed his marvellous coloured feathers and looked down rather grandly at the monkeys. "For most people," he said, "flying is expensive, but I can fly anywhere in the world for nothing." "Do you know how to talk to the English birds?" Muggle-Wump asked him. "Of course I do," said the roly-poly bird. "It's no good going to a country and not knowing the language." "Then we must hurry," said Muggle-Wump. "Today is Tuesday, and over there you can already see the revolting Mr. Twit up the ladder, painting sticky glue onto all the branches of the big dead tree. This evening, when the birds come in to roost, you must warn them not to perch on that tree, or they'll be made into bird pie." That evening, the roly-poly bird flew round and round the big dead tree, singing out, "There's sticky, sticky, sticky stuff all over the tree. If you land in the branches, you'll never get free. So fly away, stay up high, or you'll finish up tomorrow in a hot bird pie." The next morning, when Mr. Twit came out with his huge basket to collect the birds from the big dead tree, there wasn't a single one on it. They were all sitting on top of the monkey cage. The roly-poly bird was there as well, and Muggle-Wump and his family were inside the cage, and the whole lot of them were laughing at Mr. Twit. Now, Mr. Twit was not going to wait another week for his bird pie supper. He loved bird pie. It was his favourite meal. So that very same day he went after the birds again. This time he smeared all the tops of the monkey cage with sticky glue, as well as all the branches of the big dead tree. "Now I'll get you," he said, "whichever one you sit on." The monkeys crouched inside the cage watching all this, and later on, when the roly-poly bird came swooping in for an evening chat, they shouted out, "Don't land on our cage, roly-poly bird. It's covered in sticky glue, and so is the tree." And that evening, as the sun went down and all the birds came in to roost, the roly-poly bird flew round and round the monkey's cage and the big dead tree, singing out his warning. "There's sticky stuff now on the cage and the tree. If you land on either, you'll never be free. So fly away, stay up high, or you'll finish up tomorrow in a hot bird pie." The next morning, when Mr. Twit came out with his huge basket, not a single bird was sitting on either the monkey cage or the big dead tree. They were all perched happily on the roof of Mr. Twit's house. The roly-poly bird was up there as well, and the monkeys were in the cage, and the whole lot of them were hooting with laughter at Mr. Twit. "I'll wipe that silly laugh off your beaks," Mr. Twit screamed at the birds. "I'll get you next time. I'll have you in my pot for my bird pie." "How are you going to do that?" asked Mrs. Twit, who had come outside to see what all the noise was about. "I won't have you smearing sticky glue all over the roof of our house." Mr. Twit got very excited. "I've got a great idea," he said. He didn't bother to keep his voice down because he didn't think the monkeys could understand. "We'll both go into town right away and we'll each buy a water gun," he shouted. "How is that?" "Brilliant," said Mrs. Twit, grinning and showing her long yellow teeth. "We'll buy those big water guns that spray water out every time." "Exactly," said Mr. Twit, "and then we can knock them off the roof and onto the dead tree. Lock up the house while I go and make sure the monkeys are safely shut away." Mr. Twit went over to the monkey cage. "Attention!" he barked in his fearsome monkey trainer's voice. "Upside down, all of you, and jump to it, one on top of the other. Quick, get on with it." Obediently, the poor monkeys stood on their hands and clambered one on top of the other, with Muggle-Wump at the bottom and the smallest child at the very top. "Now stay there until we come back," Mr. Twit ordered. "Don't you dare move, and don't overbalance. When we return in 2 or 3 hours' time, I shall expect to find you all in exactly the same position as you are now. You understand?" And with that, Mr. Twit marched away. Mrs. Twit went with him, and the monkeys were left alone with the birds. As soon as Mr. and Mrs. Twit had disappeared down the road, the monkeys all flipped back onto their feet the right way up. "Quick, get the key," Muggle-Wump called out to the roly-poly bird, who was still sitting on the roof of the house. "What key?" shouted the roly-poly bird. "The key to the door of our cage," cried Muggle-Wump. "It's hanging on a nail in the workshed. That's where he always puts it." The roly-poly bird flew down and came back with the key in his beak. Muggle-Wump reached a hand through the bars of the cage and took the key. He put it in the lock and turned it. The door opened. All 4 monkeys leapt out together. "We are free!" cried the 2 little ones. "Where shall we go, Dad? Where shall we hide?" "Don't get excited," said Muggle-Wump. "Calm down, everybody. Before we escape from this beastly place, we have one very important thing to do." "What?" they asked him. "We're going to turn those terrible twits upside down." "We're going to what?" they cried. "You must be joking, Dad." "I'm not joking," Muggle-Wump said. "We're going to turn both Mr. and Mrs. Twit upside down with their legs in the air." "Don't be ridiculous," the roly-poly bird said. "How can we possibly turn those monsters upside down?" We can," cried Muggle-Wump. "We are going to make them stand on their heads for hours and hours, perhaps forever. Let them see what it feels like for a change." "How?" said the roly-poly bird. "Just tell me how." Muggle-Wump lay his head on one side, and a tiny twinkly little smile touched the corners of his mouth. "Now and again," he said, "but not very often, I have a brilliant idea. This is one of them. Follow me, my friends, follow me." He scampered off towards the house, and the 3 other monkeys and the roly-poly bird went after him. "Buckets and paintbrushes," cried Muggle-Wump. "That's what we want next. There are plenty in the workshed. Hurry up, everyone. Get a bucket and a paintbrush." Inside Mr. Twit's workshed, there was an enormous barrel of hug-tight sticky glue, the stuff he used for catching birds. "Fill your buckets," Muggle-Wump ordered. "We are now going into the big house." Mrs. Twit had hidden the key to the front door under the mat, and Muggle-Wump had seen her doing it, so it was easy for them to get in. In they went, all 4 monkeys with their buckets of sticky glue. Then came the roly-poly bird flying in after them, with a bucket in his beak and a brush in his claw. "This is the living room," announced Muggle-Wump. "The grand and glorious living room, where those 2 fearful freaks eat bird pie every week for supper." "Oh, please don't mention bird pie again," said the roly-poly bird. "It gives me the shudders." "We mustn't waste time," cried Muggle-Wump. "Hurry up, hurry up. Now the first thing is this. I want everyone to paint sticky glue all over the ceiling. Cover it all. Smear it in every corner." "Over the ceiling?" they cried. "Why the ceiling?" "Never mind why," shouted Muggle-Wump. "Just do as you're told and don't argue." "But how do we get up there?" they asked. "We can't reach." "Monkeys can reach anywhere," shouted Muggle-Wump. He was in a frenzy of excitement now, waving his paintbrush and his bucket and leaping about all over the room. Come on, jump on the table, stand on the chairs, hop on each other's shoulders. Roly-Poly can do it flying. Don't stand there gaping. We have to hurry. Don't you understand that? Those terrible twits will be back any moment, and this time they'll have water guns. Get on with it, for heaven's sake. Get on with it." And so the great glue painting of the ceiling began. All the other birds who had been sitting on the roof flew in to help, carrying paintbrushes in their claws and beaks. There were buzzards, magpies, rooks, ravens, and many more. Everyone was splashing away like mad, and with so many helpers, the job was soon finished. "What now?" they all said, looking at Muggle-Wump. "Aha!" cried Muggle-Wump. "Now for the fun. Now for the greatest upside-down trick of all time. Are you ready?" "We're ready," cried the monkeys. "We're ready," said the birds. "Pull out the carpet," shouted Muggle-Wump. "Pull this huge carpet out from under the furniture and stick it onto the ceiling." "Onto the ceiling?" cried one of the small monkeys. "But that's impossible, Dad." "He's crazy," said the roly-poly bird. Poor old Muggles has gone off his wump at last." "Oh, do stop shouting such rubbish and give me a hand," said Muggle-Wump, catching hold of one corner of the carpet. "Pull, pull!" The carpet was enormous. It covered the entire floor from wall to wall. It had a red and gold pattern on it. It was not easy to pull an enormous carpet off the floor when the room is full of tables and chairs. "Pull!" cried Muggle-Wump. "Pull! Pull!" He was like a demon, hopping round the room and telling everyone what to do. But you couldn't blame him. After months and months of standing on his head with his family, he couldn't wait for the time when the terrible Twits would be doing the same thing. At least that's what he hoped. With the monkeys and the birds all pulling and puffing, the carpet was dragged off the floor and finally hoisted up to the ceiling, and there it stuck. All at once, the whole ceiling of the living room was carpeted in red and gold. "Now the table, the big table," shouted Muggle-Wump. "Turn the table upside down and put a dollop of sticky glue onto the bottom of each leg. Then we shall stick that onto the ceiling as well." Hoisting the huge table upside down onto the ceiling was not an easy job, but they managed it in the end. "Will it stay there?" they cried. "Is the glue strong enough to hold it up?" "It's the strongest glue in the world," Muggle-Wump replied. "It's the special bird-catching glue for smearing on trees." "Please," said the roly-poly bird, "I've asked you before not to mention that subject. How would you like it if it was monkey pie they made every Wednesday, and all your friends had been boiled up and went on talking about it?" "I do beg your pardon," said Muggle-Wump. "I'm so excited, I hardly know what I'm saying. Now the chairs. Do the same with the chairs." "All the chairs must be stuck upside down onto the ceiling and in their right places. Oh, do hurry up, everybody. Any moment now those two filthy freaks are going to come rushing in with their water guns." "Hope their plan works. See you tomorrow. Bye."